Eddie Waitkus, baseball's natural. Eddie Waitkus was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts on September 4th, 1919. Waitkus grew up in a time of growing player popularity within sports, in part by radio broadcasts. When people like Graham McNamee and Bill Stern covered baseball games for the radio, they focused on iconic players, launching these players to stardom. When Eddie Waitkus entered the scene in the 1940s, fans of the game considered players as heroes. Eddie Waitkus burst onto the scene with the Chicago Cubs in 1946. In 1948, Waitkus enjoyed a career year, batting .300 and making the All-Star team for the Chicago Cubs, and he still showed the promise of more improvements to come. This talent made him trade bait, however, and in the following year, the Cubs traded him to Philadelphia. Waitkus did not skip a beat, however, making the All-Star team for the Phillies the following year. Although during his time in Chicago, he unknowingly gained attention from a troubled young woman named Ruth Steinhagen. As a child, Ruth Steinhagen did not want people to look at her. She did not like being the center of attention. She found an escape for her troubles at Wrigley Field. Ruth Steinhagen grew a fascination with Eddie Waitkus during the Cubs baseball games. She fed her obsession by stalking him on game day at Wrigley Field. She went to the games with her then-boyfriend to stare at Eddie for the entire game. As her obsession grew worse, she would collect every newspaper article and picture that she could find and build a shrine to him in her bedroom. She became obsessed with anything connected with him. Eddie was from Lithuanian descent, so she began taking classes to speak the language in a crazy attempt to be closer to him. In 1948, she left her job to wander around the city in search of Eddie. Waitkus' trade to Philadelphia deprived Ruth of her obsession and steadily pushed her to madness. The only thing that fed her obsession was now gone, over 750 miles away. On June 14, 1949, when the Phillies were playing in Chicago, Ruth Steinhagen left Eddie Waitkus a note to visit an old friend in the Edgewater Beach Hotel. When Waitkus went to the room to see his friend, Ruth was waiting for him and told him that his friend had left but would return soon. When Waitkus sat down to wait, Ruth pulled out a .22 rifle and shot him point blank in the chest. After she had shot him, she calmly walked into the hallway and yelled,
"I shot Eddie Waitkus."
When police arrived, Steinhagen was sitting calmly in the room with Eddie and was taken into custody. Eddie was rushed to the hospital for emergency surgery and almost died on the hospital table several times. As the radio thrust Eddie into the limelight, Ruth Steinhagen saw Eddie Waitkus as a hero. The growing fascination with professional athletes came to a dangerous level. Waitkus was not the only baseball player to be shot around this time. Billy Gurgis, a shortstop for the Cubs in 1934, also was shot a few years earlier in Chicago by a woman who he was romantically linked. Radio announcers used players' actions on the field as representations for lifestyles and values at the time in America. Athletes were pushed into a meaning more than athletes just playing a game. These shootings greatly increased security for professional athletes. Professional athletes seem to keep being hoisted higher and higher by the American culture of baseball. Professional athletes gained a celebrity status from radio coverage of games and acts of obsession like this one. Eddie Waitkus and Billy Gurgis are now depicted in the movie The Natural. These players are now immortalized in a classic that tells their stories that could have very easily ended their lives.